Hello, bonjour, konnichiwa, hola, and guten Tag, and welcome to the very first episode of the Mod Pod from KUMB. I'm joined tonight by the entire moderating team, I'm delighted to say, and a very special guest. Before we get on to him, just want to say hello to everybody who's joined me tonight. I have over here to my left, DL.
Hello.
Over here, I've got Rio.
Hi there.
And down there, I have Mr. Briz.
You too.
And underneath, we have the KUMB's co-editor or sub-editor. Or what are you, Gnome? What, are you co or sub or deputy? Deputy editor.
Deputy, I think. Third assistant, deputy vice editor-in-chief. Waiting.
That's the one. That's the one. to Gnome's right, we have the Mr. Pink Palermo.
Evening all.
And underneath him, we have the irrepressible Chalks.
All right.
And right at the bottom to the right, we have tonight's very special guest, KUMB columnist and former sports writer, Mr. Paul Walker.
Good evening, everybody.
So, thank you to everybody out there who's joined us for the first episode of this brand new podcast, which we hope to continue on a weekly or regular or semi-regular or even irregular basis over the forthcoming weeks, months, and possibly years. Who knows? Who knows how long we're going to be here for? But we're going to get tonight's very first show off by taking a quick look at the forum. There's loads of things we want to discuss tonight. We're going to have a look, as I said, at the forum, some of the topics on there. We're going to be speaking to our very special guest, Mr. Walker, finding out a bit more about him. Then we're going to be talking about the return of the Premier League and the advent of behind closed door football, what that means. We're going to look back at West Ham's recent friendlies from this week. And, excuse me, we're going to be taking a look at a couple of the players from the squad. Jeremy Ngakia, will he stay or will he go? Declan Rice, will he stay or will he go? Roberto, will he stay or will he just never come back? Hopefully not. And then we're going to dip back into the forum before we discuss the potential of West Ham being relegated. And then we're going to look ahead, finally, to West Ham's first game back in the Premier League next weekend against Wolves. So loads to get through tonight. So without further ado, we'll get cracking. We're going to start. One of the key or very busy threads in the Snug, one of our forums this week, has been discussing what our readers and members have been doing during lockdown. It's been a long period where we've all been stuck at home, most of us anyway, apart from those key workers, and with very, very little to do, or at least very little normal things to do. So I thought we'd start off by just asking the team what they've been up to. So, DL, what exactly have you been up to since March? Anything particular?
Yeah, I've got an addiction to Cornettos. Tesco's. And I've sorted the dining room out, I've sorted my house out, I've done the garden, cleaned the cars, and got fat. Apart from that, not a lot really.
Well, that's a pretty good start. I think that the putting on weight might be a common theme looking around the table.
That's right.
Rio, what about you, my friend? What have you been up to?
Well, I'm one of them key workers, so I've still been going into work. It's been busier than ever, as you can imagine. What I found though is my sleep patterns have been completely up the wall. So I've been waking up like 5 o'clock in the morning every day. And when I am at home, just coming downstairs and watching a lot of documentaries on Amazon and Netflix. Also been buying a lot of rugby shirts and a couple of random football shirts just to throw into the mix, make things a bit spicy, you know.
That seems to be a common theme. People spending money on stuff that they might not usually spend money on. What football shirts have you got, if we can ask?
I kept a little bit of a West Ham thing, but I bought an old Marseille shirt because I miss Payet. I don't care what anyone says about him. I miss the geezer. And also, I saw a Besiktas shirt, which looked absolutely gorgeous. Realised that Bilic manned him at one point. So that's my link, tenuous link.
Smashing. Been keeping busy. Mr. Bristol Hammer, down to my left there. What have you been doing, sir, in the last few weeks? Keep
Well, I
yourself
think
busy.
I've probably gained the weight of a small elephant, which is worrying me because zoos are opening soon. And I think I might not get out again if I ever go and visit one. I've also been taking time to do a bit of writing. Amateur author. I've got a couple of titles out there, but I don't think I'll ever get rich quick off them. And doing mostly gardening because let's be fair, there's nothing else to do really.
I think that's time for a quick plug. Where can we get your books? What are they called?
Oh, well, glad you asked, Graham. You can pick
It
them
sounds
up.
rehearsed. It's not at all.
Yeah. You can pick them up on Amazon. The first one's pretty poor, so I'd rather not plug that. But the second one's called Rising Tide, and it's by M.H. White, and you can pick it up on Amazon very, very cheaply. Not many people have, but I'd be grateful if you did.
Excellent stuff. Everyone go out and get Brizzy's book, and I look forward to the reviews in the Music, Film and TV Forum next week. Gnome, underneath me. Now, I know you've been back to work, but what else have you been doing with your time, buddy?
It's been pretty much all work. You get up, you work all the way through. I've discovered how to get Netflix on my Sky Q box. So I did binge watch the whole Luther series, which means that I probably know a hell of a lot more about serial killing than is probably healthy for somebody who's living on their own. The novelty from working from home sort of wore off very, very quickly. So it's just been a work, no play, really. Although I did get to socially bubble yesterday, so that brightened things up. I did see the beautiful girlfriend yesterday, so it sort of brightened things up, light at the end of the tunnel. Other than that, not an awful lot.
Good stuff.
I did try and watch German football, but it didn't last very long.
Yeah, I think we'll come on to the experience a bit later when we discuss the return of the Premier League, because it looks like it's going to be following a very similar pattern. Eamon, my friend, how about you? What have you been up to?
Sadly, much like Rio, categorised in the key worker area, which I could never quite figure out how. But so work every day. But for me, two records set in lockdown. Record number 1, no beer for 13 weeks.
Wow.
Which for me was a hell of a gig, which ended spectacularly on Friday night, it must be said. So I can only apologise to you all for some vile and abusive language on Friday. Then I sort of disappeared off the scene. And the other one, I actually been going to the fridge so often, I started to count it one day. 47 visits to the fridge in one day. I mean, it's not good. It's not good. I mean, I had no idea there could be so much in there that would merit 47 visits. But for goodness sake, I mean, it was every 15 bloody minutes for a whole day. And I think the government really, if it wants to tackle the obesity crisis, get everyone to chuck their fridges out, because that's the source of it.
Safe to assume that most of those visits weren't for water then, I guess.
It's just whatever's in there: boiled egg, slices of cheese,
got to be
cuts
done.
of ham. I mean, I'm teasing myself now. I'll be off in a minute for another visit, but it's. I think it's fair to say that if I keeled over, I don't think the paramedics would look forward to coming and help me out. Let's put it that way. I think they'd just leave me lying on the bedroom floor and say, "You can rot for a couple of weeks, son. You're too heavy."
Lovely stuff. Chalks, great to see you. Obviously,
you, mate?
years and years and years, one of the original members of the mod team. Have you been keeping yourself busy over the last few weeks?
I'm the same as Rio and Pinky, mate. Very important key worker. Keeping the country going. Nothing's changed for me. It's probably been busier than anything. Bit of Netflix when I can, though. And not missing West Ham whatsoever.
Anything you could particularly recommend on Netflix that we might have missed?
Don't the Cats.
Yeah, that's mad, actually. I saw that a few weeks ago. Mental, isn't it?
Yeah, big hero of mine.
Crazy show. Our special guest tonight, joining us all the way from the sunny north, actually. There somewhere. Paul, how you doing, buddy?
Not too bad, mate.
And what have you been doing with yourself?
Well, my slightly advancing years means I've been locked in here a bit longer and a bit more severely than most. Click and collect once a week has been great fun, and quite a lot of walking. My wife, I hate walking, but I managed to
I've actually done it a lot more than I used to. I quite enjoyed it. We got out this week for the first time, I suppose, see my granddaughters in the garden. I've realised that people can't measure 2 meters. They've not got a clue. No one's taken a blind bit of notice. And we've seen today some appalling raves up here. People being stabbed and raped. It's been a really fun day.
Oh, smashing! I've not seen the news today, and judging by that, it's probably best if I don't.
5,000 people at a rave in East Manchester. You can't make it up.
Wow. Things people do. It's madness, isn't it? It's and it's happening everywhere. There seems to be
Well,
no
I mean, you've had the same
cessation.
thing. I've seen some of the things in Essex as well. I mean, some people just seem to have decided that it doesn't affect them, so they're not interested.
Yeah. It's all
And
a
they're
bit
probably right,
crazy.
aren't they? To be honest, I mean, people of my age have got to think a bit more about, the risk factor. I mean, how many people have really been affected under 30? Not too many. And you can gather from by the way that they're behaving, they don't think it's.
Yep. It's not looking good, is it, for the next few weeks? But I guess all we can do is cross our fingers and hope everything's going to be okay.
Maybe West Ham will win a match. You never know.
Well, someone was saying the other day this is the longest unbeaten period we've had for years and years and years. So
most successful manager for years and years and years.
Yeah. Thanks, Paul. So anyway, good to know what everyone's been up to. Seems like we're all pretty much in the same boat. Next thing I'd like us to chat about is obviously one of the things we're going to be keen to do with the Mod Pod is get a special guest on every week. This week's special guest is, of course, Mr. Paul Walker. Just to give Paul a brief intro, Paul and I have known each other for the last few years, since Paul's been writing for Knees Up Mother Brown. Very, very popular figure on the website. Writes some absolutely fantastic articles, generates a lot of chat on the forum and on social media. But we don't actually know an awful lot about you, Paul. So what I thought we'd do tonight is we'd get the guys here to ask you one question each, so we could just broaden our knowledge about you as a chap, really, a little bit more. So, Gnome, would you like to start? Would you like to kick us off? What's your question for Paul?
Oh, yeah. I was just wondering, Paul. Over the years, were there any sports writers that you looked up to or influenced you in your career?
It's interesting you say that because this weekend has been a rather sad weekend. A gentleman called Steve Stammers, who worked for the Standard and the Mail and 6 national newspapers, great West Ham man. It's been really sad. I mean, he passed away at the weekend. Exactly the same age as me, which makes me a little worried about certain things. But one of the guys I knew when I was working in London, which was a very long time ago, he was starting out as well. Really, really good journalist, proper, old school guy. Did the job properly, made the phone calls, did the hard yards. But people like him, Ken Dyer on the Evening Standard, you probably all know from West Ham. People like that made a bit of an impact on me right at the beginning of my career. Since then, I mean, I've travelled very luckily. I mean, I happened to have been in the right areas at the right time when teams like Aston Villa won the European Cup and Manchester United started to play properly and have what some people think was a fantastic manager. And then I moved on to Liverpool. So I've been lucky enough to be around a lot of really decent guys that we all tend to travel on the same trains and on the same planes. There's a lot of blokes, a lot of guys now. Ollie Holt on the Mail on Sunday, Martin Samuel, people like that. They've had quite an impact on me, and you learn from watching them.
Smashing stuff.
Funny enough, I was going to mention Steve Stammers at some stage today. I wouldn't say he was a friend or know him that well, but he always, there was a little group of people in the press room when I used to go in there that kind of looked after me and didn't look down on a sort of mere amateur, if you like. And, I was pleased to be part of that little group. And there was Steve was one of them. Always got a friendly, had a friendly word for me, and they always, sort of included me in things, that little group. There was him and Ken Dyer and Colin Benson, Dave Evans, all that little lot. And I was very saddened to hear of Steve's passing. I mean, told rotten jokes, though, I have to say that, bless him.
Yes, he had a reputation for telling them rather badly. But
Yeah.
you know, a proper decent guy, and really got to look at the tributes that have been around the media this last 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
To see how people thought about him. I mean, proper old school, did the job properly, and gained a lot of respect from that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Gnome.
Thanks, Paul.
Nick, what's your question for Paul?
Yeah, well, West Ham. I mean, it seems that a lot of sports journalists are West Ham supporters, and yet again, you're another one. So, question is, why?
I'm really not too sure, to be honest. I mean, yes, you're right. There's an awful lot of people who are on national newspapers now. A lot of them have come through and are now in positions of authority. Have always been West Ham fans, and it's very hard to explain why. I really don't know. It's a hotbed, I suppose, of journalism, of craft, the East End of London and Essex, and sharp, clever, quick, witty people. Maybe that's something to do with it. I really don't know.
Is there not a journalist college not far, like where Barking or somewhere?
Sorry, I missed that.
Was there not a college like nearby, Barking or somewhere?
Well, the college was at Harlow. The national training journalists, they had training courses at Portsmouth, I think in Darlington, and in Harlow. And in fact, I went to Harlow. It was a block release. If I might add, Karen Brady applied for it and didn't get in. And I thought I'd be pleased with that. She always mentions it for some reason, but she wasn't working for a newspaper. I can't work out how the hell she thought she was ever going to get in. But so I went to Harlow. Block release 2 years. You were there for a couple of months. You learned how to drink and how to sometimes do shorthand. And the high spot of the time I was there was that I had a new car for the first time. Drove from West London to Harlow at the weekend. Stayed over in places, and it was the same time that West Ham produced that amazing result against Leeds when they beat them 7-0 in the League Cup tie, Upton Park. And I was in Harlow, and it's a 20-minute drive there and 20-minute drive back, and it's one of the greatest games I've ever seen. I've never seen clips of it anywhere or anywhere, but if you look at the history, it was an iconic match, and I was very lucky that I was in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Dale. Rio, what's your question?
Hi, Paul. Nice to see you again, mate.
Yes, bad. Normally the back of my head, I think.
Yeah, I didn't recognise the front yet, to be honest. Yeah, just got to ask, during your career, you've obviously dealt with a lot of clubs in your time. What ones have you found the easiest to deal with and the most friendly towards the press, and vice versa? Which ones have been really difficult and make things a bit more awkward? Yeah,
I mean, some of them can be very difficult. I suppose that having worked in the Northwest for a very, very long time, the two clubs which are relatively lesser clubs, although one of them isn't any longer, Everton and Manchester City, were fantastic with the media, lovely, friendly people, nice managers, great staff, looked after you really well. Not that that's hugely important, but they did. Everton particularly, smashing club, were very well run. And both of them had to compete with vastly bigger neighbours, and maybe that encouraged them to be more helpful and more cooperative in that way. But if you were asked me for one, I would say Manchester City. Going right back to Peter Swales' days and press officers there, and Peter Reid as manager and Howard Kendall as manager. Very, very good people, and a club that I enjoyed covering.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rio. Chalks, how about you?
Hello, Paul. One thing that I always think about regarding journos, why is there this seeming reluctance to actually out Sullivan in the press for what he actually is?
It's a very, very complex and very complicated story, Mr. Sullivan. I mean, there's one or two books been written recently about him and his and the background and how far it goes back to, how he started and the people he knows and knocks about with. I would suggest that he's not a person to cross. And I mean, you can read the books yourself. I'm not going to get dragged into it here, but there are books out there quite recently which have chronicled the East End and the crime. I'm not suggesting that David is in any way connected to any of that, but the people around the East End of London and Mr. Sullivan knows some of them, doesn't he? We all know that. I wouldn't cross him. And he's a very clever man. I mean, you don't make the amount of money he's got and achieve what he's done. He's not an idiot. He knows just how to organise money and how to make the very best of what he does. And that is possibly a craft, and it's something maybe to admire if you admire people who make money. But I don't really know how he can be relieved of this club because he has the majority shareholding. I feel that, I've seen people on the marches, talk to the people who are very passionate about changing the ownership of our club. But how do you do that? He's got 51%. David Gould's got 30%, whatever it is. He will sit there as long as he likes, and I find it really hard to think where and how the people who want him out, and I've got great support and sympathy for them, and I've been on that. I walk with them as well, so that they understand where I come from. But how do you get rid of him unless he decides he's going to sell? And everybody's got a price. The price that was thrown out was 800 million by Karen when it all started. Well, that's nonsense now. We've never likely to be truthful, to be honest. The valuation of the club has probably dropped below 400,000. If you look at what Newcastle were being sold for and the sort of money that Southampton were looking for, all that was 300,000, so sort of 300 million and lower. I don't think our club will come much more than that, to be honest. And Sullivan won't sell for that sort of money. The man was in it to make a profit. He was going to sell. He's going to make a profit. He always says that he's going to leave it to his family and his kids, and the same with David Gould. I tend to believe him on that, unless somebody comes along and offers him silly money. And that's the only way that I think that he will leave the club. He actually believes, and the people, if you remember when we were talking about the anniversary of the 10 years and the press conferences they all did, Karen, David Gould, he did one. They all seem to believe they're doing a good job.
So do you think that he genuinely doesn't realise that he's despised?
Oh, I think he knows that. I think that he's not a stupid man. He would know full well that there is a lot of people who would like to see him leave the club. And you can tell by the fact that Hammers United now are boasting about 14,000 membership, which is quite impressive, to be honest, for something that's been going about 18 months. A lot of people don't like the way we moved to Stratford, the way we left the Boleyn. They look at the way where the money's gone and where it is, and so on. People are disappointed, and I fully understand that. But I actually I don't think he cares about being disliked. I think the fact that he has come from a particular industry where people have got polarised views, I don't think that bothers him one little bit. I don't think that unless the protests become vast and I pray non-violent, because we've been through the ones when there was problems with people on the pitch and all that and so on, that didn't shift him. And I don't think that, I can't see where we go really with that. I pray that Hammers United works. They've put a lot of effort into it, very profound membership, very passionate. And what they have done has created waves. Even small meetings, grassy knolls outside the ground with a couple of thousand, 3,000, 4,000 people there, have made an impact. I don't think that they're not aware of that. But the virus situation has taken the heat off him. I can't see, and you see Hammers United have actually said that they're not going to, they're going to continue while the virus is there, while the country's got other things to worry about. And you fully understand that because they'll be wasting their breath. They will start up again next season after. I'm pretty sure of that with the people that are there that I've spoken to and I've listened to. They're passionate and they're going to continue. But how do you get the shareholding off him? Unless somebody comes along and offers him a lot of money, there seems to be a feeling now that the way that the economy has sort of collapsed around the world and football economy has changed, that there are people who are sort of sitting on the sidelines now thinking, where can we pick off a club? And I think that's possibly the way it might be. I mean, even the Saudis going into Newcastle. they're not paying a vast amount of money for Newcastle. They have an awful lot of trouble to appease the Premier League and even the government now. You're seeing stories about the government having had a word in the Premier League's ear about it. I think Newcastle will be taken over by the Saudis. Something like that maybe, but we have a small shareholding involved in the club, which is Saudi based. So we can't really start throwing, waving our hands at Newcastle. I don't know. Up until this virus calms down and we start getting back to something like near normal and attending matches, which might well be middle of the autumn, maybe Christmas time, maybe more, to be honest. Maybe from what you hear, from what you see from government meetings and things that happened last week with involving major sports in this country, meeting the Culture Secretary's department and this Jonathan Van Tam, who was the Deputy Chief Medical Officer, which you see on TV occasionally. Very articulate man, helped the Premier League set up the behind closed doors system that's going on now. They've met football and racing and cricket and rugby union last week, with the aim at the end to open up stadiums. Now, we've been listening for weeks now that there's no way that stadiums will be opened up before Christmas. I mean, the infection rate is too serious. We need 2 meters, whatever. 2 meters is going to disappear soon. Government are going to make sure of that. And I feel that the football clubs have maybe lobbied the government. They're basically saying, if we don't get crowds in our ground, we will go to the wall. The government don't want anything like that. Everywhere you look now, the government have turned from being protective to being proactive and saying, go for it. This is the dangers. The dangers are there for everybody to make their own minds up. I can see grounds being opened up for crowds in September, October.
Excellent.
Just a personal opinion.
Happy with that, Chalks?
Yeah.
Sorry. It's a pet subject, I'm afraid, opening grounds up.
No, thanks, Paul. It's a really comprehensive answer. Very interesting comments, especially about the ownership of the club anyway. Pinky, what's your question for Paul?
Yeah, mine revolves around the growth in popularity of the Premier League over the last 20 years in terms of news generation and the competing forces between the football journalists who may want to have access to a player to write a backstage story, and the news journalists who want to write a very different kind of story for the front page. And have you found that access to players to write football stories is getting harder and harder because of the behaviour of some of the front page news story gatherers for the media outlets, Paul?
Yes, to all of that. I've not actually done the job on the front line now for 10 years. I mean, I retired 10 years ago and I've been throwing material at Graham ever since, and for some reason he still keeps publishing it. But so things have changed, but the organisation of access to footballers has also changed dramatically. I mean, many years ago when I was working in Manchester and Liverpool, you could drive into the players' car park, sit in the car, wait for them to stop training. When they come out, you get out your car and you can talk to somebody. Never a problem. Absolutely everybody was happy with that. And that's the way the job was done. Well, now it's not the case that anymore. We have very organised media departments. They control access to players. They can punish journalists or newspapers for not doing what they would like them to do. Now, that happens quite frequently and has happened quite frequently in our club. I think Graham is grinning. I can see him down the bottom here. It's happened to Graham. There are other journalists. Matt Law been banned and then reinstated. When you start banning journalists, you create a very, very different scenario, because the rest of the media are not impressed with that, and they tend to gang up a bit and make life as difficult as they can. Now, our club, unfortunately, tends to create its own headlines without anybody helping them. Constant stream of difficult headlines, which they will prefer not to happen. But they do, and you've only got to sit on the sidelines and the material just floods at you. Journalists don't go out trying to find difficult stories about West Ham. They just tend to come to journalists. It's not difficult. Your point about news journalists, it's been a bone of contention for sports journalists as long as I can remember. When I used to work in Manchester, like the constant stories you can find about players' misbehaviour, a bit of boozing here and there, general sort of stories that people want to put on the front page. News journalists would turn up on the doorstep them for a couple of days, make their life as difficult as possible, and then disappear. And then journalists of the sort I used to work with all the guys doing football stuff, tend to get the backlash from that. They get used, they tended to be, punished a bit to a certain extent, and a bad reputation, and used to go back into the office and say to them, why did you do it that way? Why didn't you let me help? I actually have, not me personally, but we have a better access to players than you have. Maybe if you talked to us before you went out there mob-handed, we might have been able to help. I mean, there's a classic example of Manchester United when, do you remember Clayton Blackmore being involved in a rather unseemly rape allegation when they were in the West Indies? Well, that was all over the media for a while, and when United returned, nobody would let anyone near Clayton Blackmore, but the football journalist in Manchester persuaded Alex Ferguson to let us talk to him. So they put him up for us to talk to, and the news reporters stood out in the car park, which is the funniest thing you've ever seen. They were absolutely blazing about it, but they actually let the people who the player felt more comfortable with. Admittedly, he had Maurice Watkins, who was the legal advisor, sitting next to him, and it was all denial, but at least there was quotes. So you could produce a story on that score, and the news journalists who were standing out in the car park didn't get any of this, and there was an uproar in my office when we all got back. We're furious that news guys hadn't have been in. That's the way things used to happen maybe 25, 30 years ago. I don't think it's got any better, but I think it's probably got worse, to be honest. They put players up for an interview. If you don't write it the way you want, the media department get very annoyed.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay.
Would you say? Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you for the question. I was just thinking about Clayton Blackmore, and I can actually remember more. I was trying to think about his career, and the only thing I can remember is the song that's kind of related to that incident.
Yes.
An old Man classic without going into details.
No, I don't want to go into details, but yes, I mean, Clayton was not the brightest tool in the box, to be honest. And to sit with him in the middle of a press conference and Maurice Watkins, the legal advisor, on one side and Alex Ferguson on the other, must have been the most frightening thing he'd ever gone through in his life, to be honest.
Our final question in this session from Bristol Hammer, please.
Paul, nice to see you.
Hi.
From a West Ham point of view, either professionally or personally, was there a manager that you disliked so much that you actually hoped that we'd lose, so he got the sack?
Avon Grant. Avon Grant. Million miles. Never good enough for us. Never good enough for anybody, to be honest. The stories you've heard many years afterwards about how the training routines, he was never there. Very difficult manager. Just not good enough. And I always wonder why he got that job, to be honest, because his agent was one of the people that our club deal with regularly. And I always felt that when he was looking for work, the agent basically said, look, Avram, you go for Avram as manager, but then I can push players your way. Piquillon was one of them. Freddie Piquillon was one, possibly. And I feel that possibly was why he got that job. Unless, of course, our board were looking at the fact that he'd taken Chelsea to the European Cup final, when we all know that John Terry took Chelsea to the European Cup final. So, of all the managers, probably him. I mean, people will go back to Harry, who got on quite well with, to be honest. I pretty much liked the guy. Billy Warren was fantastic. Gave me an amazing interview within days of him actually joining the club. I was working in Manchester covering Oldham. Did anybody remember the Oldham Cup double leg when we lost 6-0 in the snow up there? Well, the second leg, nobody wanted to do it in London or from my office. Nobody was interested. It was all over. So I volunteered. And I thought, I'll come down. I could come down, go and see my mum and dad, stay overnight, go back, and the firm will pay the expenses. Amazingly, a piece of organisation. But went to the press conference beforehand for that game. And I think it was Billy's first game, actually. And listened to me to his press conference, approached him afterwards and said, look, I'm a West Ham fan. Any chance of just having a 5-minute chat with me on my own? And he said, come up to the office. up the steps in the office, and we sat in there for half an hour. Didn't have to do that. He'd never met me before in his life before, and never met me afterwards. But it was a decent thing to do. So Billy has always been high in my estimations. Harry too, but and Lou Macari. I know Lou Macari got an awful lot of stick for things that happened off the field, but Lou Macari brought one or two pretty decent players to our club, including Ludo. A very good manager of his type, good coach, but his off-field behaviour pretty much killed that off. But still working, he's still around Stoke by all accounts. He's not far from where I live, doing charity work and after dinner speaking, but generally quite a nice guy. I mean, I can't go about that much before that, to be honest, in terms of managers. Harry, obviously, John Lyle, I've met him twice, totally in awe of him. I was very young as a teenager. Greenwood I've never met, and we go back further than that, although Ted Fenton was manager when I was first game I ever saw. But those are the managers that I look upon in awe, and the nearer they get to now, you get to know a bit more about them all, I'm afraid. Alan Pardew, people have talked about Alan Pardew. There's polarised versions of Alan Pardew's, what's the word I'm looking for, behaviour. But he did put together a pretty decent team. One of West Ham's failings over the centuries, decades, is not following up success. When you get to a final, when you get a good place in the league, you need to go back the following year and you need to build on it. Spend carefully, buy players to improve the squad. We consistently do not do that. You've only got to look at the carnage that has followed triumphs. Even the 60s, 64, 5, 66, 64, 65, 66. What happened after that when we should have had a team which had 3 World Cup players in it capable of winning the league? And if we had bought Gordon Banks at the time, when we should have done, we probably would have done. But we just didn't do it. The ownership of the club has always been reluctant to spend. And it's not just the current people involved, but the previous gentlemen were involved, always thinking in terms of not doing it. So you get to 65, 67, we get through to 75, win the cup, get relegated. We end up in 1980 winning the cup as a second division team. That sort of progress has never changed at West Ham. I mean, 2005, 2006, the Liverpool final in Cardiff. Pardew put together quite a decent team there. But how long after that was before we got relegated? We end up by trying to get Tevez and Mascherano, which we all know about all that, where that all out of the wall. We do a pretty decent season to a certain extent. And then for whatever reason, Alan Pardew gets fired. And then we end up with managers that you can't remember, Glenn Roeder. We know what I mean. Not managers I would consider to be capable of running our football club. We do not build on success. It's been a nightmare ever since I've been involved in the club. They just don't do it. They don't do it. The only person who did it was John Lyle. He took the side from Greenwood in 65, 66, took us to another European final. People seem to forget we did play another European final. We played at Wembley several times, got lots of European lots of finals, and he did build a team. He rebuilt the team of Greenwood into the side that won the cup in 75, and he rebuilt it again to win it in 80. And you look at the progress of the players that he brought in. That spell between 66 through to 80 was probably the best organised spell we've ever had. But we haven't done it since. If David Moyes now has a problem of keeping us in this division, he's only got to look back to the last time we did something reasonably good, which was Slaven Bilic's side that finished in the highest position in the Premier League. Excellent team, really lovely football, great season. Okay, emotionally leaving the Boleyn was one of the reasons. But you look back at some of the clips. I've done a lot of this while we've been locked down. Looking back on YouTube and finding the old clips of the teams, and you look at the side that we had then. When that Manchester United game was a wonderful achievement. We beat them all the way through the match. Better team all the way through the match. Payet was the key to that. It all falls to pieces around him afterwards. I don't know whether it damned or not, but we do not build on success. And that team 4 years ago was as good as I've seen at West Ham for a long, long time. And we could, if things don't go well, we could get relegated 5 years afterwards. The buying since then has been iffy. I think that's the best expression. Players that you've never heard of and are now not here. You look at the players that we built 3-4 years ago. How many of them are still here? I mean, vast amounts of players bought summer after summer. None of them have been successful. Largely none of them have been successful. I'm sure you can pick out a few here and there, but they spent an awful lot of money on rubbish. And
yes,
that's got a lot to do with the ownership.
Yep, it's been a common theme, as you say, Paul, for many, many years now, and success has certainly been fleeting over the years. Just one thing I wanted to touch on before we end this particular section is going back to when you were talking about the people that you've interviewed over the years. You told me a really interesting story the other day about one of West Ham's lesser-known heroes who you spoke to about 35, 40 years ago. I think it was a guy called Sam Small.
Yes, it was, yes. My father was a West Ham fan. My grandfather was at Wembley in 1923. My dad was there when they went down in 1932, whatever. And during the war, my father was in the war. Lived in the East End during the war, during the Blitz. Used to go to Upton Park an awful lot. And he would tell me about the wartime cup final in 1940, which he went to. He would tell me about the games at Upton Park when they were playing in the middle of the Blitz. To be honest, I mean, I think I wrote a piece last week saying that there's been a lot of discussion about whether we should be playing football in the current crisis.
Yeah,
nobody bothered about that in 1940 and 1944. They played football for 4 or 5 seasons straight the way through. You can argue whether that was right or wrong. I don't really know, but Dad went to see them a lot, and he mentioned 1 or 2 players: Stan Foxall, Len Gordon, and Sammy Small. And when I was in Birmingham, I used to work in Birmingham before I went to Manchester. I read something somewhere which suggested that Small had returned to his home city. And I was quite determined to think I shall find him. It sounds like a good story. I mean, this is a guy who no one's talked very much about, scored a win at Wembley. So anyway, I spent a bit of time looking for his phone number and found it. Went to see him and his wife, lovely lady, really, really looked after me. Very pleasant afternoon. Very nice interview. And that was, I used to work for the Birmingham Evening Mail then. So that's when that got into that particular paper. But one of those nice things about your career, you can remember back 40 years ago, and what a nice guy that was, and what a nice person his wife was. That must have been, I'm trying to think when that was. It must have been late 70s, early 80s, because I left Birmingham in 81, 82. So just before that, and he passed away, I think, in the middle of the 90s. But just a lovely story, and you managed to find some pictures of him that I'd never seen before.
Yeah, it was a real shame. We, I know you did try and source that interview. We just couldn't find it.
It was 40 years ago, Graham. Give us a break. We're not going to find I'm just going to find the cutting from then.
Well, thank you for answering all those questions, Paul.
No problem.
I think we probably all know you a little bit better now.
That's a shame.
Sat through those very comprehensive answers. Thank you very much for that. I want to move on now to bring us up a little bit more up to date and talk about the return of the Premier League. Now, we all know that because of the current situation, we are going to be watching football being played behind closed doors. For us West Ham fans, it won't be a completely new thing because, of course, we all remember a certain game against Real Madrid's B team back in 1980. Was it 80 or 81? 81?
81. I was in Birmingham.
80, wasn't it?
80, was it 80? 80? But when, of course,
it was 80. It was in September 80, something like that.
Start of that season, 80, 81.
After we won the cup, it was the Cup Winners' Cup, and it was before Christmas, so it was the first round of that. So
okay, so we of course have been there, and we've all seen the video of West Ham, and you can hear the players shouting and even swearing, I think, a little bit. But it looks like the Premier League aren't going to allow us that possibility again. And I've just been having a look, actually, at some of the things that they're introducing such as pre-recorded supporter songs to mark goals by the home team, fan walls beamed into the stadium, stadium dressing to help disguise empty seats, players recording their own pre-match features for TV, supporters given the option to hear FIFA 20 crowd noise, which for those of us with young kids is an absolute bloody nightmare when that's all we hear half the time anyway, and fixed cameras in the tunnel area. It's going to be very, very, very different. Rio, what are your thoughts on the possibility of having canned crowd noise when football returns?
Well, yesterday I watched the Bayern Munich v Mönchengladbach game, and it came across because they had the crowd noises being piped through, and I actually thought it was right. It kind of reminiscent of a World Cup qualifier, you know, one of the early like the group games.
Yeah.
If you'd walked out the room, you wouldn't have known any different. It was all right. I mean, I just don't trust our lot to get the right
ambience,
right
perhaps,
over the tannoy, you know.
Right.
I've got a feeling that, you know, what our club's like, we're so inept at times. We'll end up with the Muppet Show being played, like the soundtrack that, rather than crowd noise. That is my that's my fear. But no, I thought it was all right. You watched the Gladbach game; it was perfectly reasonable.
Oh, well, that's encouraging. It might not be as bad. DL, what are your thoughts on that? Is that something that you're particularly looking forward to, or does it sound like hell on earth?
For me,
yes.
No, I was coughing. Well, I think I've made it. I don't think the football should have come back anyway, so I'm just totally indifferent to it all. It ain't the same competition with the 5 subs and all that. It's different rules. So I'm actually completely indifferent to football coming back. Obviously, I want us to win and stuff, but to be honest, not really fussed about it. Should have been played, personally, but maybe that's just me.
Gnome, do you think football should have come back now? Is it too soon? Is it too late?
It's funny because in a weird way, I haven't actually missed it. And given how much of my life is sort of devoted to either travelling to from football, writing stuff about it, or editing stuff about it, I think you've got to look beyond the wider thing of just football, and I think it's being used as a well, I mean, I'm not old enough to remember the Second World War, but there was a lot of stuff that went on in the Second World War for morale purposes. And we mentioned earlier on the Football League Cup, wartime cup that we won against Blackburn. That final took place, within weeks or days of Dunkirk happening, for example. And there's sort of wider things at play here that the nation needs a bit of a cheer me up. And it's not going to be the same. Every time they come up with another idea as to how this is going to look, I just laugh because if we go back to April, and I sort of write these April the 1st spoof things, and I put together exactly how football's going to look when we come back with a few things that were just sort of light-hearted jokes. But every time I hear something, it sounds a little bit more like the joke thing that I wrote.
Quite prescient, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, social distancing inside the penalty box was one thing, I suppose.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
we've been practicing that for years. But I mean, I'm sort of glad it's coming back. But in an ideal world, when this all sort of like blew up, I think the time to sort of cancel it was a couple of months ago, and just to say this is not going to happen anymore. End of season. Let's just start again next season. Everybody in the same place. I mean, that's effectively what happened in wartime in previous. They abandoned the season. You had wartime matches again to try and keep morale up. Much as there was sort of light-hearted programs on what they used to call the wireless, and but I think having sort of gone on that long, they got into a situation where they were going to have to bring it back. So I am looking forward to it. it's a weird experience.
Yeah.
Gearing up to a match you're not actually going to go to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's going to be quite unique, isn't it, for many people. Paul, one of the things you've been very vocal about and have written about it quite extensively is how it's going to affect some of our older supporters, because obviously the government advice is still for people of a certain age to be very, very cautious. And I know you've expressed doubt about whether or not you should renew your season ticket. What are your thoughts?
Well, that attitude hasn't really changed very much, to be honest. Bearing in mind that I think when it started to become obvious that the season was not going to happen anymore, and next season was under considerable doubt, there was a certain amount of decent scientific and medical evidence which suggested that things were not going to get much better until about Christmas. Yeah. I think a lot of us had come to accept possibly that the season wouldn't start in the normal way until a lot further down the line. Well, I don't think that's the case anymore. I think that we are going to be asked to make risks about ourselves. Whereas my son, who is under 40, very unlikely that in a million years that he's ever going to get the disease. Yeah. So you find that his risk is different to mine. My risk at over 70 is what is it? 40% chance of catching it over 70. If you get to 80, it's more than that. But the people who have died under 40 are 1% of the people that have been involved, and the younger it gets, the same thing applies. So you can see where the people are coming from. Even if you look about things not to do with football, children being sent back to school. Now, my granddaughters, who are 5 and 6, going back to school tomorrow. And one of the government scientific guys, is it Wiley, said the reason they decided on that age group, reception class, was that their parents won't get the disease. Now, that was, when I first heard that, I thought that was a rather callous, cold, but it's a typical science, mathematical decision. Sure. And he's right, isn't he? People who are under 30, have got children who are 5, are very, very unlikely to get this. Their children might spread it, which is a problem we're going to have to consider, my wife and I, when we have to be careful who we actually meet. But I do feel that we've got to a situation where people are going to have to make a decision. The club want to provide a season ticket. Every club, it's not just us. You only got to look at the way that they have prepared the season ticket emails that we've all had, and talking about next season and maybe holding money back and buying your season ticket. They're not thinking about not having a season ticket next season. The reason is that they have to have the money. Now, it's moral to a certain extent to be talking about money, and I wrote about that as well, when people are dying. But the economy, as you can see with everything the government are now doing, is desperate to get the economy back to making money. And the people are going to go to work tomorrow, going to go to school tomorrow, going to go to shops tomorrow. They're making a judgment. Am I going to go to the shops? Is it safe? My decision, not yours. The shops are open. Yeah. And the same thing is going to apply, I feel, with season tickets. Scotland have come up with a half and half, haven't they? They've done a deal with Sky where they're going to have a season ticket where the first bit of it is going to be on the telly, and the rest of it is going to be later on. But what they want is people to buy it. Yeah. Because they have to have cash flow. And I don't blame them for that. If they don't have cash flow, they will go out of business.
Absolutely.
Like any other industry is the same as that. Everything's the same. Marks and Spencer's, John Lewis, everybody. My daughter-in-law is going back to work tomorrow. She works for TK Maxx. That's that has to operate. Otherwise, she won't get any. She'll be out of a job. So I understand that.
The concern there is that this is not going to go away anytime soon. I mean, there's already talk that this will go over into next season and potentially for the rest of next season. Now, the question then is, as you've rightly raised there, the financial issues. Where does that leave? This isn't just a Premier League club problem. This extends throughout the whole footballing professional pyramid. Pinky, I wondered if you had any thoughts on that? And you know, is it inevitable that football must return? At what point does it become a case that clubs are going to start going bankrupt, and we're going to start losing some of these institutions that have been with us for, you know, in excess of 100 years in some cases?
Yeah, I think, picking up on Dyer's point earlier, do I think it's too soon for football to come back from a health perspective? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
From a financial perspective, it has to happen. It has to happen now. The clubs are teetering on the brink. Not just the Premier League clubs. The Premier League clubs will get by. But lower down the league system, if you take Middlesbrough, most people would have a positive view of Steve Gibson, the chairman of Middlesbrough Football Club.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The club owes him £105 million. Now, that's a chunk of change. The Venke's at Blackburn Rovers, people have less positive views, perhaps, about them. I'm not sure why, but they certainly do. Blackburn owe the Venke's £142 million. Wow. These are enormous sums of money, you know, that major corporations would struggle to fund.
Yep.
For football clubs, particularly in the Championship and lower, I mean, the Championship clubs last year, in the good times, lost a combined £300 million. They're paying out 107% of their income in real wages. These are the economics of the madhouse, and the problem being, if you switch off the cash flow for even just a few weeks, it is absolutely crippling for these clubs. Of that, there's no doubt. And I would fully expect a number of Championship clubs to go down the administration route. I think the lower leagues, it's going to be really tough. I mean, you've got clubs who will be utterly dependent on the generosity of their owners, whoever it may be.
Yep.
And unfortunately, some of those owners will think, I'll put in as much as I can to keep the club going. Others will just say, well, actually, in League Two, the main source of income is the money at the gate still.
Yeah.
League One is the money at the gate. And until the government make it very clear about, is it 1 metre, is it 2 metres, then can they open? And furthermore, then you're into the realms of personal risk, which Paul has just been touching on. Who's really going to risk it if you're over 65?
Yeah.
Is it really that important to you?
Yeah.
You might think, no. And even if 20% of supporters stay away, the impact on the lower league clubs will be devastating. For us in the top flight, the timing of this couldn't be worse. And if we look at our own finances, I mean, shocking doesn't begin to describe them. I mean, seriously, the whole story of the move from the bowling ground to Stratford and all the rest of it, you know, we've done it to death. But if you look at it, as soon as we started buying some players, I think we owe something like 86 million pounds to the clubs for players.
Yep.
We owe the directors 60 odd million. So we're 140 odd million in the hole. And the 27 million pounds that supporters put in each season as match day income.
Yeah.
Well, when you hear the phrase football is nothing without fans, well, there's 27 million pounds worth of why that's true. Because believe you me, West Ham United really, really, really want our money at this point in time, to the point of desperation. And going back to the point that Paul touched on earlier about the likes of Hammers United and so forth, I think perhaps a spot of humility from the club, recognising the contribution the supporters make to the success and well-being of West Ham United, wouldn't go amiss at this point in time, because our 27 million, they're all bang on about the broadcasting. And that's very important, of course it is. But if you are running a business and you had budgeted to receive £27 million and suddenly you're not going to, it's a massive problem.
Yeah, it's still a very hefty chunk, isn't it?
It's you know, you add it up, it's a lot of money, and it's a lot of people in the normal jobs at the club. would count on to make sure their wages are paid and things like that. So these are desperate times for football clubs.
Yeah.
And I think clubs, I mean, our club, they've done a rights issue. The directors are looking to put £30 million of equity into the club. I don't think that'll be the last rights issue they need to do, if I'm being honest, because one thing you can't shift are players if they've got a contract, without particularly picking on individuals, but we all know there's one or two players who are costing an awful lot of money relative to what they're contributing on the pitch. And I'm afraid, who's going to buy them? Who can you shift them to?
Yeah.
So if you're the chairman, you're sat there going, player X is costing me £5 million a year, and I've got no income. You know, the clubs are utterly beholden to the TV companies now.
Mm-hmm.
I think what we're going to see is the subtle shift to pay-per-view TV broadcast rights, where they will to extract the money from the supporters. It will be something along the lines of, give us your season ticket money for home games, and we will guarantee you a stream that you can watch away games on. That kind of thing. So you'll have to still buy your home season ticket to give the club the money.
Yeah.
But then you get to watch the away games on a stream. It'll be that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But again, they're coming to the supporters for the money, because whether it's through our TV subscriptions, shirts we buy, gate money, we're the only real source of income for football clubs.
Yeah.
And I think now is the time for football clubs to really recognise that and show some humility towards supporters.
You're right. It certainly is worrying times. It's an interesting point about shifting sands potentially in the way that clubs can gather revenue. Really, I mean, you made a very interesting point there about the championship clubs. I think saying that 107% of their wages or 107% of their income is going on wages, and I think the acceptable figure is around 70%, isn't it, to be viable? So that just gives you some indication. What's that?
It is, and you know, if they were at 70%, their debts, their losses would be wiped out, so they would stop losing money. But if we just return to the Premiership, I'm just looking here at the Deloitte's Money League. Tottenham Hotspur, £82 million match day income. Imagine you're the £7 million a year chairman of Tottenham Hotspur, Daniel Levy. And not only do you have to fund a stadium that you can't put a supporter in, you're also going to miss the £82 million that you were banking on those supporters spending in that stadium.
Yeah.
So for us, 27 million is serious. For Tottenham, 82 million, it's catastrophic.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Arsenal, 90 odd million, huge sums of money. These are sums of money that would drag down major corporations, let alone, you know, football clubs with turnovers of £300-400 million. This is a desperate financial position that football is in, and I'm not sure every club in the league system is going to survive, and those that do, is going to be a very different world going forward. And
this, of course, we are, of course, talking about the Premier League clubs, which are, you know, in the best shape possible out of all of them to survive. So, yeah, it's definitely going to be worrying. And I think we've all got a local club near us that is potentially under threat. So it'll be an interesting few months or next couple of years, and just to see what happens, really. Just going back, bringing Briz in here. How do you think that playing behind closed doors might affect West Ham specifically? Do you think that might be beneficial to the club, or do you think it could be a hindrance? Or, you know, do you think it's just going to be the same for everybody?
Well, I mean, I think I've got to be honest and say I think the only reason they're bringing football back at all is so Liverpool can ponce around the city on an open-top bus. You know, I think if that wasn't the position, I'm not sure they'd be bringing it back at all anyway. That and the fact that Sky have got to offer something because people are switching off their subscriptions in droves. I think that's kind of a, you know, that's the perfect storm for them to actually go ahead and do it. I think in terms of West Ham, I'm with DL. I don't think it's the same competition. I reckon at the end of this season, whoever goes down, there's going to be some legal challenge around this. I can see it coming.
Yeah,
I shouldn't be marching up again, regardless of who goes down. and it'll just be kind of it'll just be seen that everyone will be challenging it and saying, that's not fair competition. I'm not sure that we had the right stadium. Players weren't available because they tested positive. You can see it coming. To me, they should just wrap it up now. So, okay, let's start again next season and get on with it.
Whether we like it or not, the Premier League is going to restart next Wednesday. Aston Villa v Sheffield United. We'll be chatting about that in a little bit. But before we do so, I wanted to touch on the last 7 days. And West Ham have actually been playing football, believe it or not. We have had a couple of games, haven't we? First game, back in midweek, we started off against a championship side, that lot from Loftus Road. Rio, tell us what happened.
Hey, I bring glad news, glad tidings from the East End. We won 4-1.
Hey!
Problem's over. We're going to win the league. There's been a complete lack of information coming out of this game. The only person I've seen quoted has been Mark Warburton, the KUMB manager, who said that it was just a really good run out, good test for their lads. So I presume for ours as well. The only thing that is sort of rumour and hearsay, apparently Moyes wants a complete ban on talk about it to kind of hide his tactics, which is a first for me, to be honest. I'm not always said actually has tactics, but the rumours are 3 at the back, with Rice slotting in the back 3 where Ogbonna are injured. So, but 4-1, it's a good sign, isn't it?
Nothing to sneeze at. Got to take it. But this is typical West Ham, isn't it? A good pre-season, I guess. Following that, of course, we played Crystal Palace. Was that yesterday?
Yep.
We played them yesterday. Breeze, tell us what happened there.
Well, 2 things. We beat Palace, which is, again, great result. 3 at the back, I believe, again. And Wilshere got injured. What surprise, surprise. So when we clap for the NHS heroes, I think we have to remember that Jack Wilshere's had his fair share of those. So. Yeah, I mean, nothing more than that, really. It's really difficult to pick up any news at all about any of the friendly games. But apparently Haller played well and got a goal, so that's all I know. Haller
has scored both games, I think, hasn't he?
Yep, yes, yeah.
Banging form, then. We'll take that. It's I suppose we need any small crumb of comfort we can grab to take into the next week's game with Wolves.
If I may.
Sorry, buddy, go on.
Palace safely mid-table, won't go up into Europe, won't go down into relegation.
Yeah.
I wouldn't take a win over them as any form guide at all.
Very fair point. Very, very good point, actually. One of the Seb Haller did indeed score yesterday. We also noticed, or were also told, that Jeremy Ngakia scored. Now, this is a curious one. Up until a couple of weeks ago, we were all under the impression that our 19-year-old academy right-back superstar was on his way out, having refused to sign a new contract. We haven't heard anything to the contrary to say that's not the case. However, it would seem a little bit unusual for David Moyes to play him if that's actually correct. So I don't really know what's going on there. Dear, what are your thoughts on Ngakia? Should he stay? Is he worth spending a bit more cash on, going the extra mile for?
He's played 4 games, hasn't he?
Yes. Yeah.
He's been all right. He ain't exactly set the world alight, has he? We don't know what he's been offered. We don't know if another club's offered him more. I mean, yeah, there's the Reece Oxford thing in there where we pumped a load of money at him and he turned out to be a bit shit. He could well be the same, couldn't he? I'm not going to cry over spilled milk if he goes. I just hope his career bombs if he does, really. But I don't.
Fair enough.
I don't hold a grudge on that. No, I don't know. It's a strange one. I think he might have something lined up. Would surprise me, Spurs, because he does seem an all right player. He showed promise. He didn't set the world on fire, but he showed promise. Who knows? Would it be a mistake letting him go? Only time will tell. He might bomb down the leagues, or he might go and win the league somewhere. You know, it's the chance you're taking it with the young players.
It's a good point you make. Actually, he has, for all the speculation, all the promise, all the talk, he has only made 4 first-team appearances. But then you touched there on Reece Oxford, and there has been a little bit of that lately, hasn't there? That we do seem once again to be struggling a little bit to hang on to our best young stars. I mean, going back a couple of years, people like Rob Hall players like that. Again, you know, as with Oxford, he didn't go on to make any great inroads or become a Premier League star. Junior Stanislas,
well, that's the thing,
players
isn't it?
like
I mean,
that.
people go nuts about us letting these players go,
Yeah.
but it seems that ultimately, in the long term, the club have made the right decision because they ain't set the world alight. They've not gone on to play for the Tottenhams, the Man Cities, the Liverpools. You know, they've gone to play for smaller clubs. Ultimately,
That's right.
Even Oxford going out to Germany, he didn't do particularly well out there, and he's left wherever it was. It mentioned Gladbach he went to, wasn't it?
Augsburg, I think he ended up, wasn't it?
Augsburg. He's now gone to somewhere else, and he on loan because they kept shipping goals galore. So, you know, maybe we all, in this respect, maybe trust the club that if they're not prepared to chuck the money at them, maybe it's just because they're not good enough.
Maybe they know better than we do. It's a very fair point. Another young player who, of course, has been linked with a move elsewhere this coming summer, especially to Manchester United and Chelsea, is the mighty Declan Rice, who has been, I think, without doubt, the greatest success from the academy in recent years. But again, is this a player, Chalks? This is a question for you. Is Declan a player that you think we should be absolutely breaking the bank to keep? How good is he?
I think we should break the bank to keep him. I don't think he'll want to stay, and I wouldn't trust the owners to do anything with the money. So all of this talk about players being worth 50 million, 60 million, 70 million, 80 million, it doesn't mean anything to us, does it? Because the money will never get reinvested. So anyone decent we've got, we should do everything possible to keep hold of them because we're not going to replace them. You know, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, it's a really good point. It's, you know, you can't, as they say, you can't put pounds and pence on the football pitch. They're not going to score you goals.
No.
Gnome, do you think he'll stay?
I think I don't think he'll stay long term. I think he'll stay for maybe the next year or so. The problem we've got, as you just pointed out, is that picking a figure out of the air, I don't know, with the current situation, maybe the transfer values may have collapsed a little bit. But say we get 80 million in, it's a double-edged sword because we've got a transfer policy that says if we get 80 million in for someone, let's buy 5 or 6 players who might, quote, do a job, unquote, as opposed to let's actually get one decent player in for a position where we need it. Of course, the other thing is if you sell Declan Rice and you've got £80 million burning a hole in your pocket, every other club in the country or in Europe knows that you've got £80 million to spend.
Absolutely.
And suddenly their Carlos Kickable, who's going to do a job, moves from being a £5 million player to a £10 million player because it's West Ham buying. So
you've got to bear in mind as well that I don't think there's many clubs out there that really want to deal with Sullivan. So
it's a dwindling number, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a very good point. Paul, are you with Gnome on that? Do you think that if we were to sell him, that it's quite possible that David Moyes wouldn't see all, or even a fair proportion of the revenue that he earns, or his salary?
I'm not sure that you see much of it this summer. I think this particular situation depends on just one thing: what the boy says. If he says, "I really want to leave, and I want to go to whatever," and he would know by now, without question, through his agent, what is on offer. If Man United had made a bid or Man United had made a contract offer, he would know about it. And the same thing applies to Chelsea. Nobody goes in for a player until they've done all the groundwork and they've found out what his contract is, how much he's earning, whether he fancies it. You do that by talking to the agent. Now, if Declan Rice has decided that he wants to leave, we've got no option.
Yep.
You do not want your most important central midfield player, probably most important young player in the squad, playing for you if his heart's not there. Now, so I think that you see awful lot of stuff is, he's the last person we're going to sell and we're going to do everything we can to keep him and he's not on offer. It's all bollocks, for want of a better expression. Mm-hmm. If the boy wants to leave, that's it, it's gone. So it depends on whether he wants to leave.
Yeah.
And I think that could unfold maybe when we see what division we're in.
Pinky, did you have anything? You were going to add something there?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things.
Couple of things.
I think it looks like we've lost Pinky temporarily. So I'll go over to Breeze. Breeze, what are your thoughts on the Declan situation?
Well, to be honest with you, I think his heart's at Chelsea. I always see him on TV dicking about with Mason Mount. Well, every time he's on TV, he's with the guy.
Yeah.
He's always looking back and reflecting on their friendship at the time they're at. And when people are talking like that, you just get the feeling that's where he wants to be. I mean, I think that much as I'd love to keep him, I think he's growing this season by leaps and bounds. And I think I'm not sure he's an £80 million player. I think that in today's transfer market, he probably is, but I'm not sure he's that talented to be an £80 million player. I think he's the best player we've got. But I think he's off to Chelsea, and I think whatever we do with the money when it comes back in, I hope we just don't do another kind of redknapp where we just put in 5 or 6 squad players who are just useless. So
how dare you diss Christian Daly? That's outrageous.
TT Camera.
Gnome, of course, it goes back, I guess, to the point Gnome made about the values of players diminishing this summer. Pinky, we got you back now. What were you going to say there, buddy?
Yeah, just a couple of things. As I say, 3 months ago I'd have traded him. I wouldn't do now. But unfortunately, if you look, Frankie de Jong last summer went from Ajax to Barcelona for €60 million. We've got Thomas Partey being touted around the Premier League by Atletico Madrid currently, same price. Both of those are currently better players than Declan Rice, in my opinion.
We seem to have lost you again there.
What it'll boil down to, what does the player want? Yeah.
Yep.
In
Sorry,
addition
we've
to
got
what
you
the
back.
player wants, you've got who's got the cash. And when Manchester United bought Harry Maguire, they paid 80 million cash on the nail. And whoever phones up David Sullivan with that amount of money gets the player. It's that simple, because we're skint again.
Yeah, sobering stuff, really. One player who certainly isn't as good as Declan Rice and who is in the current West Ham squad, although not currently with us, is third choice goalkeeper Roberto, or second choice as he was when he initially came. He, of course, is out on loan at the moment in La Liga with Alaves, and as I'm sure many of you will have seen in the last 24 hours, made another one of those horrendous gaffes, which cost his team a goal as he came out to claim a ball, completely missed the cross, and the ball was headed in, or actually I think it was off his shoulder. Either way, the goal stood, and Alaves lost to Espanyol, who were, I think they still are, the bottom club in La Liga. But yet again, another, it's sad, you don't want to have a go at a player, but it is quite concerning how somebody saw him as a Premier League player this time last year. Gnome, who's to blame for that?
Well, it's me, obviously, isn't it?
It's you. Were you the scout? You may as well have been, because we haven't got any others.
There was an article in some paper the other day which referred to West Ham's scouting system as being a sort of dinosaur in nature. We clearly didn't do sufficient due diligence on the player. Just look at the record of the clubs he's played for. Every club seems to have sent him out on loan somewhere, with the exception perhaps of Olympiacos, which is, with all due respect, hardly the most testing of the league. There's I also get a bit worried when I look at a player's transfer record, and there are strange dealings because his economic rights are owned by a different company somewhere, and he got sent back to a club and then sent immediately out on loan. And who scouted him? I know. I just having a nightmare earlier about Burnley away, and now there's an ex of mine who lives up that way who I'm still on good terms. She was giving me a lift back to Blackburn to get the train home, and I got in the car, and to this day she really knows little about football, despite living with me all those years ago. But she said, "Oh, your guys didn't play very well, did they?" Then I said, "Well, one in particular." I said, "Our goalkeeper." And I explained the 3 goals. I said the first goal, he punched the ball that he should have caught. The second goal, he kicked the ball to somebody who wasn't looking. And I said the third goal, he decided to punch into his own net. And she said, "No, I can't believe it's that." I said, "No, seriously." And I got a message from her. I got home, late on, and I got in. I got a message from her, and she said, "I broke the habit of a lifetime and watched you a lot on Match of the Day." Really, he punched the ball into his own net, didn't he?
He's shit.
Yeah, whoever scouted him. I mean, okay, he wasn't signed with the intention of being our first choice.
Yeah.
But then, so maybe like anybody who's really, really good isn't going to want to be second choice. But you rather get the impression that he's somebody who'd be quite happy to be second choice somewhere in the bench and taking a paycheck. He may be a lovely guy and all that, but I've not met him and all that. I have met Alan McKnight, for example, who had similar problems in his career. And when you meet him, it's a real gentleman sort of thing, and will put his hand up and say, "Oh, you're a West Ham fan."
That made a change.
But
But this was a Pellegrini deal, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, it was set up by his mates in Spain. He was going to. They actually wanted him, thinking he was going to be first choice and not Fabianski.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an absolute joke. I mean, some of the things that go on. Sorry.
No, go on, Paul. Carry on. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It was a very strange
things
deal.
that go on in transfers these days, and agents and who gets what out of things. They had him set up to be our goalkeeper. Whatever reason, they can't believe he was a good goalkeeper. But somebody's getting something out of that somewhere, isn't they?
They've got to be, haven't they? Absolutely got to be. Either way, it's turned out it was a massive, massive disaster. Chalks, I can't see you at the moment, my friend, but I believe you're still with us.
Oh, I'm here.
You are there. Now, you, of course, back in the day, were a pretty decent striker. I think I can vouch for that, having played alongside you once or twice.
Prolific.
For our West Ham supporters team. I bet you would have loved to have played against a goalkeeper like that, wouldn't you?
He's genuinely the worst goalkeeper I've ever seen. that's been supposedly professional.
Yeah,
you could put anyone in goal. He's been that bad. And as Paul's sort of referring to, people making money off the back of getting him in. What does my head in is someone like Pellegrini. Pellegrini clearly wanted him, but Pellegrini's got multi-millions in the bank. If I was manager of West Ham, I'd get him in because I'm skint. But when you've got 30 million in the bank, why get in a numpty just to get another 2 million in the back pocket? I don't understand it. But then I suppose it all goes back to how
your own question.
It's how football people behave, I'm afraid.
Yeah, unfortunately.
They live in a bubble.
But
I don't know what he was like because only from one of their former clubs and all. So they must have known he was shit and still signed him.
Yeah.
Yes. Very strange deal all round. Definitely. And Rio, do you think that obviously West Ham are in a difficult position at the moment, and Roberto didn't play that many games, but do you think the timing of his introduction when Fabianski got injured had a really detrimental effect to our season as a whole, and that's perhaps carried on and led us to where we are?
Yeah, absolutely. I blame him for our demise this season. As soon as he came on against Bournemouth and when Fabianski got injured, you could see like the confidence in the players almost instantly drain away.
Yeah.
And before that game, we was doing well. I think it was up in 4th or 5th, weren't we? And we lost one start the season.
Had a triple start, didn't we?
We just nosedived as soon as he came in. Yeah, he instilled no confidence. The players must have seen him on the training ground and thought, this clown's going to be our keeper for however long.
He's like a competition winner, isn't he?
Well, he certainly won a competition. The amount of money I think we're paying him to warm the bench.
That's staggering.
Rio makes a very good point there, though. Away at Bournemouth, you could see the defence had. Obviously, none of us had seen him really. Sort of. I mean, I think he turned out in the League Cup or something like that, maybe. But when he came on, you could see the back four looking at each other and things where they were sort of happy to let the ball run through. Suddenly there were sort of hurried clearances into touch, which put us under pressure. That sort of thing. It was clear that nobody in front of him was happy with him being there.
You'd have more confidence with Stephen Hawking going in goal, wouldn't you? And he's dead.
I mean, this is
sobering
the price we
thoughts,
pay, though,
anyway.
isn't it? It's the price we pay, isn't it, for the revolving door on the manager's office, a chairman who thinks he's a director of football, bad deal after bad deal. You know, Jeremy Ngakia might be leaving the club because we've probably paid Ryan Fredericks too much money. We might be facing relegation because somebody signed Roberto thinking he could play in goal. We've got £4 million a year draining out of the club's coffers when who could have guessed it, Jack Wilshere was going to be injured every single week. 6 starts in 2 seasons. There's something really wrong with our recruitment strategy and policy. And all roads lead back to the chairman, I'm afraid.
Something definitely rotten in the state of Stratford at the moment.
Indeed.
Anyway, enough of rubbish goalkeepers, and I'm slightly mindful of the fact that time is creeping on a little bit. So we're going to move this on just a little bit now to our next section, and we're going to take another look back at the forum this week. Now, one of the threads that has been keeping me particularly amused is the thread by Lincoln Hammer about if West Ham were a singer or a band, who would we be and why? Rio, over to you first. Who would West Ham be if they were a band?
Well, as you all know, regular readers of the forum, my favourite band ever is the Wild Arts.
Oh, yes.
Every time they get on the cusp of doing something amazing, getting the public eye, they implode. And it just sums West Ham up completely. A loyal fan base, passionate, loyal fans who have travelled the ends of the earth to see them. But as soon as we get anywhere near being successful, pull the plug.
The Wild Hearts we have. Chalks, what about you?
The Smiths, absolutely shite.
As easy as that.
Sure. My man. As Graham knows, I'm with you on that one.
Heresy. I'm going to cut you off right now. DL, over to you. Who would it be and why?
It just picks me up because I was going to say the Smiths and all, but for different reasons. You know, every now and again they'll do something that gets you off your seat and taps your feet. Otherwise, it's just fucking depressing.
Pinky, what about you?
Only one candidate, Dr. Feelgood. Who doesn't feel good watching West Ham? It's that simple.
Mighty Dr. Feelgood, of course, from Canvey, just over the road to where I'm sitting right now.
Absolutely.
Fantastic band. Breeze, what about you?
I reckon we'd be Kate Bush, because Babushka sounds like a Sullivan sign-in. And after 60 minutes, all our players look like they're running up a hill. So,
Oh, excellent.
Oh, good.
We like that.
we're all rehearsed.
Paul, what about you? Have you had a thought about this one? If West Ham were a team or a band, who would they be?
Well, I can go back a lot further than you lot, but I always thought Freddie and the Dreamers really never quite achieved very much in the wake of the Beatles and so on. But Coldplay, you hear them and you forget them. They've achieved nothing in my mind. I can't remember a song they've done. Everybody says they're wonderful, could be wonderful, but they're not.
Fair enough. Coldplay is, of course. There was a point when I remember the entire West Ham crowd singing a Coldplay song.
Yes, unfortunately, but that was because the guy on the mic was trying to find a song for Allardyce.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
It
Exactly.
ended up by telling us this was a song we have to sing. So we all sang it at Wembley when we got promoted, and that's the last time it was ever heard of.
Yeah, I think we would have sung, Spurs Go Marching On at that point. Everyone was so deliriously happy. It wouldn't have been an issue. It's quite interesting. We've had some absolutely brilliant answers on the forum to this one. Lincoln Hammer, who started the thread, said he thinks West Ham would be Paul Weller because they were big in the 1970s and 80s with that classic cult status, had a loyal band of followers and disciples who stuck with them through thick and thin, and every now and then they can still come out of a classic. So that's a good one. Psycho scored the lot. Believes that West Ham would be the Stone Roses because they've been utterly mismanaged over the years. Alf Gitt went for Slade. Who can forget Slade? Used to be decent, occasionally brilliant. Now just a glorified tribute act. I like that one. Vietnamer went for the fall, purely because of the number of players we seem to go through. Ironing Board went for a bit left field this one, Engelbert Humperdinck, because we've had undoubted moments of glory, but have been largely overshadowed in the public imagination by people such as Tom Jones, which is fair enough. DM went for Rod Stewart, a supremely talented showman, stylish and modern, made his name in the 70s and early 80s, continuing that theme, but his star has faded since then, but he still has a loyal following. Very nice. Ray's Rock went for Dolly Parton, careful, still trading on her glorious past achievements, but never managed the top spot in this country, despite her huge cult loyal following. Probably not what you thought I was going to say. And fronted by a couple of big, no, I can't read that out. Pablo J went for Madness, more so for the appropriateness of their songs at times. House of Fun, Madness, Embarrassment, Grey Day, and of course It Must Be Love. Very nice. My favourite one, however, though, would be from The Straw, who is a relatively infrequent poster on these at Mother Brown, who went for David Bowie. And he went for Bowie because he was a great young hope of the 1960s, showed flashes of genius in the mid to late 70s, brilliant in the early 80s, but not much output since then, and died in 2016. So brilliant, love that one. And finally, Dan Dasnut Nut Rock went for Christ, the season needs to restart soon. So
nobody came up with Spinal Tap then.
Spinal Tap were in there. I think somebody else. I didn't make the short.
I was just thinking Jack Wilshere in the drummer's seat. That's all. Yeah. I mean, it really wouldn't surprise me if he got injured in a bizarre gardening accident. You know.
We're veering off course into the realms of prog rock, so I'm going to have to reel Gnome back in before we get into Genesis or Yes territory. And we're going to move on to, this is a touchy subject, relegation. Looking at the Premier League table, we think there's probably 7 clubs, I think, in it now. Norwich bottom on 21 points, Villa 25, Bournemouth, Watford, West Ham on 27, Brighton on 29. I can't count, can I? That's 6, isn't it? Not 7, because I don't think Southampton with 34 points are going to get dragged into it. So we're looking at 6 clubs really that can go. We are teetering on the edge at the moment as West Ham. We've got a couple of difficult games coming up. We've got Chelsea and Tottenham before the fixtures perhaps ease a little bit. But is it going to be enough? Is relegation a genuine fear? Pinky, what do you think? Are we going to go? Or are we going to stay?
I think it'll be touch and go. Just looking at our last 3 or 4 games, you look at it, 11th of July, Norwich City, I think they'll be gone by then, so that might help us. 15th of July, Watford, massive game. And then the winner takes all, I suspect, on the 26th of July, Aston Villa. And whoever wins that game stays up, whoever loses goes down. And I think had the season carried on as normal, I think with McGinn being out for Villa, it would have helped us. He'll be back. He's fit. I think he, after Grealish, is their most important player. And I fear for us, I really do. It's going to be touch and go. Really is.
Briz, what 3 do you think? What 3 teams do you see falling through the trapdoor? And do you think West Ham will be one of them?
Yeah, I do. Sadly, I think West Ham will be one of them. I just don't think we've got the quality in squad depth. I think that probably Norwich are gone. And I think Villa will go as well. So I think it'll be us, Villa, and Norwich going down. I think, like Pinky said, I think if we carried on the momentum, we might have had a chance. I just think now everybody's starting from scratch again. I just don't think we're good enough. I think we'll go down.
Chalks, how do you see it playing out?
Yeah, I think we're gone. I think Norwich are gone. I think the problem that we've got is that we've got too many players that don't really seem to be up for the fight, and they're probably all looking at their next move already. Get these next 3 games out of the way, which are more than likely going to end in 3 defeats, or we might pick up a point. I don't think we've got players that will be up for the fight that we'll need in the last 6 games. So, personally, I'd be surprised if we actually win a game. But you know me, I'm a pessimist. The third team to go, I think, possibly Bournemouth. So us, Bournemouth and Norwich.
Rio, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm very fearful for us. Again, like the guys said, I don't think we've got the fight in us. Norwich are the ones that I think have already gone.
Mm-hmm.
But the ones to look at for me is Brighton. I looked at their games today.
Yeah.
5 out of their net 6, all against the top sides.
Yeah, they've got some stinkers, yeah.
Yeah, and the sixth one of that run is Norwich, who are going to be fighting for their lives, hopefully. But yeah, I don't think if Brighton get off to a bit of a bad run, I think they'll get sucked in even more, and they could be the third choice.
So you see us, you think we're going to stay? You happy for us?
It's touch and go, but I'm not hopeful.
Pinky? Oh, I've done you already. We started with you, Pinky. Sorry, Paul, Paul, what do you think?
Well, I'm notoriously pessimistic, as all my friends tell me about this. I've seen too many relegations, I'm afraid, since God knows when. I actually think we've got the talent. We've seen snatches of it. I mean, not much, to be honest, and we've seen some pretty indifferent stuff from people who are being paid a lot of money and we think are good. But there's been a 2.5, 3 month gap. People have got themselves fit. Certainly got with Fredericks, who I think is a decent fullback.
Yeah.
I just feel that I feel we can get, these next 3 games are very difficult. I accept all of that. I wonder whether we might get something out of the Wolves. I don't know. I was up there when we played them, and they were absolutely destroyed us. And they were a very, very effective, efficiently organised team. But the gap we've all had might affect different teams in different ways. I mean, we were shocking. I mean, the last time we played was at Arsenal, beaten again by VAR, walked out of that game, a game that should never have taken place, by the way, bearing in mind what's been going on, how that was allowed to take place when we see now the damage that the Champions League game did and Cheltenham did. Quite amazing. But we didn't play that brilliant that day, but I don't think we deserved to lose the match. It was just a very poor goal right at the end. I'm just like to think that we've had a gap and a bit of a chance to get people fit and get a system organised and get a manager who nobody particularly thinks much of, to be honest. Everybody doubts his abilities to now, after whatever. I mean, I go back to, I spent a bit of time in Liverpool, probably 7-8 years when he was at Everton, when he was at his pomp, when he turned a really, really good side out and they really worked their guts out. Yeah. Now, things have gone pretty badly wrong for him since then. Not all of it is necessarily his fault, but some of it is. He can be a bit of a dinosaur, saying. But we'll just have to see. He's had the opportunity to organise the side, organise the training, plan things properly. Let's just see what he can actually achieve from being given that time without the problem of having to win matches. That's been he's had 2-3 months now to put this together and get the best out of people and get some sort of organisation.
So if I had to put you on the spot, Paul, would you agree?
Touch and go, I think we might just get away with it.
We've got to stay. That's the first one so far. We'll take that. DL, what are your thoughts, buddy?
We're going to be the surprise team, you know. We're going to go on a stomping run and we're going to be mid-table. I think, right, although Moyes, I don't think he's the right man for the job. When he gets it together, though, he does get it together. I think that we've got, what's his face back, that new guy, Suchek, is it? He's back from injury. And he looked promising. I like the look of him.
Yeah.
So he's going to be back. We've got Fredericks back, so a proper fullback. A bit iffy on the left, but Creswell and the other bloke, who I ain't going to pronounce because I always balls it up, they're capable. So I think we've had a start in the score as well in these friendlies. I'm hoping he ain't peaked too soon. I don't know. I think we might be in for a little bit of a surprise. So, yeah, we're going to go down.
I was just going to go for I was going to say there's a little bit of cautious optimism coming out, but
no, I think we'll stay up. I think we'll be. It'll be close in points, but yes. It's 15th, 14th, something like that.
Okay. Last but very much not least, Gnome, what do you think?
We're staying up.
Yes.
Simple as that.
Yeah, I think Norwich, Villa, and one of Bournemouth or Brighton are going down. Rio hit the nerve on the head that Brighton's next load of games are horrendous.
Yes.
And if they start that badly, they'll get into a run that even at the end of that run, when they've got arguably easier fixtures, that I think that will have held them beneath the waterline, to be honest. It's so difficult because, I mean, I was just looking at the gibberish that Preview Percy churns out, and he's pointed out that current form, there is none. And how can you guess? He's got a point for once. I mean, how can you guess, though, what people are playing like? And we weren't in a bad situation. I mean, Arsenal, as Paul said, very, very unlucky to come away with nothing out of that one.
Absolutely.
Maybe not a win, but we would certainly, they're equal. No, I think we'll stay up. I think we do tend to, I think, I'm as guilty of this as anybody, but obviously our focus is on West Ham and we're looking at us and, we've got every right to be pessimistic. But
Sure.
When you're looking at this sort of thing, you do have to look at the states of other clubs as well. And I think we're better placed to survive it myself.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, one other point that nobody's actually touched on
go for it, buddy.
is that we can change half the outfield, don't forget, as well. Now, we're notoriously unfit. So we've got 5 substitutes. That could be a little joker in the pack, that.
Yeah, but with no ball boys, them subs are going to be spending half the game getting the fucking ball.
Well, it depends on who's up front, though, doesn't it? If it's you, Chalks, then they'll have to keep going to the stands.
So, looking back at the looking at your predictions, there, we have got 3 people believe we're going to be staying up, 2 to go down, and 2 of you think it's touch and go. So that's actually that's quite optimistic, I think, in the circumstances. And I'm kind of reminded of a certain interview that some of us did with Sky Sports back in 2007, when we were in much deeper dire straits, and we were asked whether we would survive then. And I think there was only one of us who's sadly not with us at the moment who predicted that we would stay up. The rest of us were absolutely determined we'd go, and look what happened that year. So I think that's a pretty good result, all things considered. So we'll take that, I think. Only 2 definite going down. So good stuff. Good stuff. We'll take that, as I say. Moving on, a couple more things to do. We're coming towards the end of this first episode of the Mod Pod, which, given the fact that we've been on for about an hour and 40 minutes so far, probably isn't a bad thing, because if there's anyone still awake.
Past my bedtime.
A couple of things I want to touch on. First of all, we have got coming out this week, tomorrow, if I get my finger out, the 125th anniversary map. Now, I've got one of them over here, and I don't even know if you can see this, but we're going to be selling these on site as from tomorrow, and it basically lists the best players from West Ham's 125-year history, all the best teams, and from some of the, including some of the players that weren't involved in any of those teams and other club personnel, people like Wally St Pierre, who was a player at the club and then went on to become a scout and actually had his own testimonial, which must be a pretty rare thing. Ernie Gregory, of course, who was at the club for 50 years. And then all the best players from teams such as the 64 Cup Final, 65 and 1980, etc. It's a really fantastic piece, this. So if you want to get yourself one of these, we're going to be selling these prints on site from tomorrow, hopefully, priced at about £15 each.
Great Father's Day present.
There is, however, some good news. I'm going to be giving one of those away to mark our first show, and really just as a well done to anyone who's been able to manage to stick it out this long. If you want to win a copy of that, just send us an email to our brand new email address, which is modpod@kumb.com. Once again, modpod@kumb.com. All you've got to do, send us an email. Doesn't have to have any information in there, just your name, or just put competition at the top. And later in the week, we'll draw a winner for one of those. And they really are fantastic things to pop on you all. Of course, we've got Father's Day coming up this week, so a really good thing that you might want to get for your old man.
Graham,
One thing before we go, we are, as we said earlier, back in the game this week or next week, Saturday. We face Wolves, as we've been touching on. Quick look at our history against Wolves. I'm just going to expand this quickly so I can see. We have played Wolves many times over the years. We have won 28 games, drawn 14 and lost 21. Our first meeting was a 1-1 draw 101 years ago at Molineux, actually, April 1919. That would have been last year. The last time we played him was in December 2019, funnily enough, also at Molineux. And we lost 2-0, as Paul touched on earlier. It was a really demoralising game. Funnily enough, Wolves have won the last 3 meetings between the two teams. They've scored 6 goals. We haven't even scored. They've won 1-0, 3-0 and 2-0. And our last win against Wolves was back in... anyone remember? When was our last win against Wolves? For those who haven't looked at the running order properly.
January 2011 by any chance?
Amazing. Well done. I even remember the month. We beat them in the FA Cup, didn't we, in the 3rd round? But the last time we beat them in the Premier League was 9 years ago. 2-0 win. And that, I think, was probably the season they were relegated. But I just wanted to touch quickly before we go. Memories. Any memories of previous Wolves games? Paul, do you want to kick us off? Because you mentioned it.
Well, way back in the early 50s, late 50s, one of the 2nd or 3rd games my father took me to at Upton Park. I can't even remember the score. I think it was a Good Friday. I just remember the gold shirts, that's all. I was a very, very small boy.
And did we win?
Yes. That's a long while ago. Hey, come on, we're talking a long while ago, pal.
Pinky, what
Norman
about you?
Dealey was playing. Norman Dealey was playing.
Who was that, sorry?
Norman Dealey.
Norman Dealey.
Remember him? Scored in the cup final in the early 60s.
Possibly just a little bit before my time. Just a little bit. Not as much as I'd like. No might have remembered it, but...
remember Derek Dealey?
No.
Remember the Dooleys? Were they related?
No, they weren't.
No, that's the Nolans you're thinking of.
Pinky, what about you? Any memories of Wolves from yesteryear?
Yeah, it may well have been back in the 2011 game, Graham, when I seem to recall that we all looked at, I think it was Matt Jarvis at the time was on the Wolves box.
Oh, yes.
And we all thought, oh, quite a good player. Got that wrong, didn't we?
Yeah.
You see the opposition, you see, yeah, you can see why he's their player. We signed the bugger, whenever it was, and turns out to be not quite what's said on the tin. So I don't really have fond memories of
our record signing at one point, wasn't it?
Matt Jarvis.
Yes. What a! I think he's actually done more for West Ham's calls in podcasts and things like that since. We seem to have lost you again there, Pinky, briefly. No, he's gone.
Sorry.
Oh, we got you back now, buddy. Go on. What else were you going to say? No, you've gone again.
It's not a happy hunting ground for us. It really isn't.
Yeah. Yes, we've certainly, especially in recent history. Chalks, what about you? Any memories, fond or otherwise, of Wolverhampton Wanderers?
You should remember, really, Gray. You and me going up to Wolves for the FA Cup game.
Yeah, I remember.
And do you remember walking through that tunnel?
The tunnel of love.
Yeah.
Tunnel of love, and that bird's backside. Yeah.
See, I kind of remember all the little gangs that were hanging out at the entrance.
Yeah,
it's interesting what things stick in the mind, isn't it? But it was, yeah. I mean, that of course is quite renowned, isn't it? The tunnel at Wolves. It's been
the tunnel at Wolves, the subway.
The subway, yeah. It's yeah. Cost,
also the day that I rode over the Dartford Bridge in the snow on my Vespa.
Now that of course is KUMB legend, of course. The story was you I can't remember why you ended up back at my place, but we were there, weren't we, after the game presumably, and you were riding back to Kent, and for some reason you decided to traverse the Queen Elizabeth Bridge on your scooter in a false 10 gal.
Yeah, and I got home from your place near Basildon to Swanley in about 20 minutes, and I'd even pulled over and bought 8 cans of Stella. Definitely one of the worst moments of my life, and I can still picture that truck driver's face when he saw me going past him over the beach.
But one of the funniest. He's KUMB legend, that story. He's up there with the best of them. Rio, what about you? Any memories of Wolves?
Yeah, one of my favourite of the games. The last league game of the 1989-90 season. Liam Brady's last ever one.
Oh, yeah.
We won
the goal.
He scored that momentous goal in the last minute. Run towards the chicken run, and the chicken run towards him. And it was chaos. It was a great game, though. Great day out.
Breeze, what about you?
Yeah, I was going to do the same as Rio, to be honest. I think that just sticks in the mind for all the right reasons.
Okay. DL, Wolves?
What, the one that never got played, that should have, when it was called off for the snow. I think it was Wolves.
I think that's right, yeah.
Yeah,
Was it, there was no snow, was there?
And it was...
Oh, yes.
There was no snow. And I was like, well, why is this being called off? I was meant to go to that, one of the very few games I was going to go to. And about my birthday, I think. And, didn't go. Because it was
the game that
called
never
off
was.
snow and ice. And there was none around the ground.
What about you?
Me? I always think back to the 70s. Now, somebody's probably going to correct me if I'm wrong, but I always remember the game being against Wolves, the one where somebody did a thundering clearance from the penalty area that hit the referee square on in the head, knocked him out, and Bobby Moore went down, blew the whistle, and called on the physio. I'm sure that was Wolves. If it isn't, I apologise, but it was one of the memories I've got of being there. Just nobody quite knew what to do, and Bobby sort of went down and took charge of things.
Funnily enough, I can't remember. I can't remember.
It's always funny seeing a ref. Sorry, Gray.
No, sorry. I was just going to say I can't remember either, but it did make the 100 greatest West Ham moments that we recently curated on the site. So it's in there somewhere. It's in the lower reaches.
And of course, it's always funny when a referee falls over. In any case, whatever the reason, it's like chimpanzees. It's just inherently funny. Just looking at it.
Well, that is just about it, actually. We've just shy of 2 hours on the clock, so probably went on a little bit longer than I'd anticipated, but fantastic content anyway. It's been an absolute joy getting everybody together. Now, I should perhaps point out that it was about 16 years ago that several of those of us present here gathered in a Chinese restaurant, or an Indian, I can't remember actually now, following a game at Upton Park. And we had this amazing idea of creating a KUMB podcast. And we did actually record a pilot while we were sitting in the restaurant just to see how it went down. And we never actually got round to doing anything about it. So I guess in terms of sort of sitting on the boiler, that was probably the longest running pilot that there ever has been. Chalks, you might remember it. You did a fantastic monologue about a certain member on KUMB at the time.
I remember the chicken dance sack. It was it
was memorable. I'm guessing it wasn't a Chinese then, if that was on the menu.
Definitely wasn't.
But it's been an absolute pleasure. Before we do go, one more thing. We are going to keep weekly predictions, or I say weekly, for however long we do the podcast for every game. And we'll keep a little table and a little chart just to see how everybody's getting on. I can pretty much guarantee that I'm going to be at or very close to the bottom because I'm always useless at predictions. But one of you chaps, I'm sure will do much better and take the title. For our guests, what we'll do is we'll have a guest tally. So, Paul, whatever you predict today will be added to the scores that our future guests predict. So let's get off with you. Score, please, sir.
What, for Wolves?
For Wolves, next weekend.
2-1. 2-1.
2-1 to West Ham? 2-1 home win?
Yeah.
Excellent stuff. Okay. Rio, what are you thinking?
2-2.
2-2. Like that. And who's going to come from behind, us or them?
Can you rephrase that, please?
That's what Chalks was saying in the earlier podcast.
In time on a West Ham tradition, we're going to go 2-0 up, then throw it all away.
Brilliant. Like Arsenal 2002 all over again. Breeze, what do you think?
1-1 for me.
1-1. And again, who's going to be scoring first and who's going to be scoring the equaliser and delighting their fans?
Well, I think we'll dominate for 89 minutes. We'll score the first goal, and then 90th minute we'll concede for some stupid goal that nobody saw coming. So, off the course pass.
Sounds perfect. Sounds about right. Pinky, what are you thinking?
1-0 defeat.
Ooh. Early goal or one of those late James Beattie efforts?
Oh no, with West Ham, it's the hope that kills you. So we'll hang on grimly for 89 minutes, probably having had a player sent off in the first minute, and in the 90th minute it'll go in off someone's arse, and we'll have that sinking feeling. It's just how it is.
It certainly is. DL, how do you see it going?
It's going to be like a bonkers pre-season friendly, and we're going to win 5-4.
Well, I don't think anyone would complain if that was the case. Who's going to be scoring our goals in that case? Is Hilaire going to carry on his good form from the pre-season?
I ain't got a clue.
Honesty is the best policy, as they say. No, what are you thinking?
Well, I was going to go 2-1 to us, but am I allowed that if Paul's already nicked it?
You can go with whatever you want, my friend.
I'll still go for 2-1 to us then. We'll take a 2-0 lead. They'll get an equaliser, and we'll be biting our fingernails for the last 15, 20 minutes.
Brilliant. And last but very much not least, Chalks, what's the score going to be?
5-1 Wolves.
Bloody hell. That's optimistic. I might not be finishing bottom after all. And presumably we'll take the lead and be leading at half time.
No, it'll be a consolation penalty from Noble. Antonio will spend most of the game climbing into the stands to get the ball back from passes.
So a real mixed bag of results there. Personally, I'm going to go for. I can't see anything other than a draw. I think it will be probably similar to Rio. I think we'll score early and we'll all get excited and think, everything's going to be great, and then they'll score late on and we'll be clinging on at the end and they'll be hitting the post and bar and God knows what else. So we have a right mixed bag of results. We shall see how we fared next time we come back. A couple of things I need to say before we wrap up. This will not be the last time we all get together before the next Mod Pod, because we are starting another show this week. We are going to get together and try and do what Rio has come up with the name for this actually. Eyes Up Mother Brown, the brains of the group. We are going to sit down and watch the game together and laugh or cry or whatever happens along with each other, and try and provide you with an alternative commentary while we're all banned from attending the ground. So if you'd like to tune in and join us, we will be live from kickoff next Saturday. It's 5:30, I think, isn't it, kickoff time? So join us then. We may possibly have another Mod Pod prior to that. I don't know. We'll see how we feel, and we'll see if anybody actually watches this and what the reaction is before we decide. But we will definitely be back one way or the other next weekend with the Eyes Up Mother Brown show, watch-along type thing for West Ham v Wolves. Before I go, it just leaves me to thank my entire panel tonight. Rio, thank you very much, my friend. Breeze up there, thank you very much for your contribution. Pinky, great stuff as always. Gnome, thank you once again. DL, superb stuff. And Chalks, who has been in the black for the last half hour, but is still very much with us. Thank you, my friend.
Yeah, I am here. Sorry about the darkness. I'll sort something better out next week. I've been getting cramp holding up the iPad.
I'll get you a stand order, buddy. That might help. Thank you anyway for your contribution. But of course, thank you very much to our very special guest tonight, Paul Walker, for coming on and giving us your time, Paul, and answering all our questions, however intelligent or inane they may have appeared.
That's my end, is the inane bit.
But thank you, everybody. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in, and we will see you all very soon. Don't forget, before then, come and join us on the forum, kumb.com/forum. Come and join in the chat. It's not just football. We talk about all the stuff we've talked about tonight, what you've been up to in pre-season, what West Ham would be like. If we were a band, we'd cover music, film and TV. There's even a bit of politics in there. You want to stay away from that, though, if you can, because it's a bit of a nightmare. Anyway, thank you very much for your time, everybody. We'll see you next week. And I suppose we should just say it, really, shouldn't we? Come on, you Irons.
Go on, you Irons.
Go on, you
Irons.
Lions.